Hey everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, it's a pre-recorded workshop that I did about a week ago, so on January 23rd, and it's a multi-server installation guide, just going through how you can set up CrowdSec to be one main instance of the Lappy, and then you can then configure other instances of CrowdSec to talk to one single instance. This can be useful because let's say if you have like 3 or 4 servers, all of them can communicate to one instance, and then you can accumulate all of your decisions in this one instance, so then all servers can be protected if one IP address is detected on one of them. So if you like this video, make sure that you like and subscribe, because we've got way more content coming out this year and you definitely do not want to miss it. So you'll be now seeing a pre-recorded version of me. I won't have this fancy microphone. I'll have just my old microphone. So I'll see you in that video. Hey everyone. Hope I didn't scare you if you got me on another tab hiding in the background. Hey, if you're just joining us on Livestorm, it's your first time on here, you'll see at the bottom right of the screen. Yep, right. You'll see like chat, like questions, polls. Head into the chat and just say hello. Just make sure that you're live and kicking, because I'm starting a little bit early, but I'm not starting yet. I'm just going to be talking for a couple of minutes while I let people slowly flood in here. Hello, everyone. Hey, yes. Hello. I'll reiterate it now since some people have spoke. If it's your first time on Livestorm, there's in the bottom right, there is some buttons. So you got like chat, question, polls. Yep, the session's being recorded just currently. So anything you say, anything I say is all on the record. So yeah, in the bottom right, you've got like polls, questions. I'm just going to publish a poll right now. So love to get your opinion on it. So Camille, the idea is for this is that it's going to be recorded, and then if you've got access to the link still, you can come back onto the Livestorm website and you can just watch it whenever you want. However, in a week's time, we'll be uploading it to our YouTube channel as well, so you don't need to go through the Livestorm stuff if you don't want to. Cool. And then if any of you has any questions while I'll be walking through there, just use the questions tab, and then just type your question in there. It will then submit it to me. And then at the very end, we're going to have like a dedicated section for the question stuff, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through it just in, well, I say one take, but hopefully one take with no errors. And then any questions you have, I'll then come up and then we'll reflect on those points on the back. Cool. Right. Well, it's 6 o'clock on the dot and I started 5 minutes early, so we are here and now. So let's start. Okay, just to give you a general overview. So what you can see on the screen at the moment is I have got 2 terminals open. One that is the main Lappy, as we call it. And then the other one is I called it the child agent, just so you can easily make the difference between main and child. But basically the main is going to be where all the data is going to be sent to. The child one is basically the one that's going to be speaking to the main, just so it's easier. If, however, you can't read it, I've also color coordinated at the bottom as well. So when I'm on the green tab, it is the main Lappy, and when I'm on the purplish lilac colored one, it's the child Lappy. So in the first step, let's give you an overview of what we're doing. So I did post a link on the very start of the chat, but I'll post it again. So I've basically created a GitHub repo that's got some of the steps that I'm going to be walking through. So if you want to head into here, then you can kind of see the steps and follow me on along and read it. However, you can also use it as a place to come back and reference. So let's say if I got you a configuration, and you want to replicate the configuration, you don't have to type it all out. It's already here in the repository. So we're going to head over to the CrowdSec section first. So what we're going to do, it's beneficial for the main Lappy to not be SQLite The reason for that is when you're ingesting a lot of alerts, sometimes SQLite just can't keep up with writing to the database. So we're going to upgrade that to Postgres. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to install Postgres. So bear with me 2 seconds. So I've already done a apt update anyways. I did it earlier. Oh, and just so I prefix this, both of the machines have already got CrowdSec installed. So if I do CSCLI machines list, you can see that there's already CrowdSec installed. Obviously, they're both just independent at the moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install Postgres. So this is a Ubuntu machine for the main LAPI. So we just do that by just installing PostgreSQL and then PostgreSQL contrib as well. So I'm just going to tap that with a tap Y and then run that through. Shouldn't take too long. Great. So that's Postgres installed. Just to make sure that it's running, we're going to do systemctl. So system control and then status on the Postgres SQL. So at the moment, by default on Ubuntu, it automatically runs the setup scripts. So it already has a basic database already running. Except for there is one restriction on that, is that the only user that can talk to the Postgres instance is the Postgres user. So before moving over to the next steps, which is generating the random password, logging into the database, and creating the CrowdSec database for us to use, I'm just going to switch over to the Postgres user. So you just do that by doing sudo or sudo, taci, tacu, and then over to the Postgres user. We've now logged into that. So from here, we can run the PSQL. It's basically like a binary to interact with the database. So once you run that, you'll log into the Postgres database. And from here, we will now run the next commands that is jotted into the documentation. So what I'm going to do, so obviously generating the random password is the strongest way to do it. So I'm just going to copy this command here. This will just generate a random 20 character password that I can use. So I don't need to come up with it myself. If you've got a password manager, just generate the random password in your password manager, and then at least you can keep it there for future reference. So we're just going to run that on here. So that will just spit out a random password. So we're going to make sure that we keep this for later by just copying it. And at the moment, I'm just going to paste it into my browser just so I can keep it there nice and safe for now. Obviously, if you're doing this, it's probably best to keep it inside the password manager, not just obviously on your browser. Then we're going to go back into the terminal and run the PSQL command. And then we're going to run the next commands that are in the next section here. So we're just going to create a database called CrowdSec. And then once you get a create database return, that means it's managed to run that correctly. If you get any sort of errors here, you might not be in the right user account, or you might not have permissions over the Postgres instance. Okay, and then we're going to copy this command. However, I'm just going to obviously make a change to it. So I will paste it into here first. But obviously, where I've got insert your random generated password here, do not hit enter without pasting it in firstly. So we're going to move this back, and then we're going to head over to my browser, grab the random generated password that we've got, and then paste it into here. Just make sure that you don't accidentally pick up any extra characters, such as like a space. Anything between the single quotes is what the password will be. So hit enter on that. And then we've got create role. So that means that it has created a user account of CrowdSec with the username. And then the randomly generated password is now its password. And then we're going to head over and do the last command, which is we're going to grant the CrowdSec user the ability to talk to the CrowdSec tables or database that we've just created. And then once we've done that, that is it for the Postgres setup. So from there, we can just run exit. And again, because we're still logged in as the Postgres user, we're going to hit exit again. So now we come back to our original user account, which was root. So I am just going to clear my screen. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to configure CrowdSec to go and talk to the Postgres instance. So by default, if I run ss lntp, it runs on 5432. If you don't configure it otherwise, the instructions that I'm going to give you now are exactly the same, but I'll show you where you can change it in the config if you do want to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my repository and I'm going to grab this config yaml.local. I'm just going to hit raw on it. And then I'm just going to wget this inside the CrowdSec folder. So we'll just cd over to xc CrowdSec. And then I'm just going to run wget with that raw command there. What this will do is it will just spit out the config.local within the current working directory, which is etc CrowdSec. We're then going to use any of your text editors, pick your fancy. And then we're going to open the config yaml.local. So here, this is my old password in my old demo, so I can get rid of that. And then we're going to go back to my other password, and I'm going to grab that password. And I'm just going to paste it in here. The reason that the config, the password has quotes around it is just in case if you have any special characters, it's best just to wrap it in quotes, because let's say if you have like a hashtag or anything like that, it will think it's a comment in YAML and it will just ignore the rest of the line. But in here, this is the configuration that needs to be changed. So I'll just walk through these steps here. So for the type, there is two types that you can use with Postgres. There is Postgres or PGX. The difference between the two is that PGX is a newer driver. So it has less memory footprint and it can be quicker according to the documentation. Also, the Postgres driver I don't think it's being actively developed anymore. So it'd be best to use the PGX one. The user account is just basically the username that we picked. So going back to the commands that we ran, you can see here that we created a user with the name CrowdSec with the password. So for here, you would just put the user account that you made. Next, we're moving on to the password. So exactly the same. Whatever password you gave inside that statement, you'll just paste it in here between the quotes. The DB name is the database name that we gave it. So going back to the SQL statement, create database CrowdSec, it will be that CrowdSec database that we created. And then the host, because we don't have a remote database, this is all local to the machine. You can just put the loopback address, so that's 127.0.0.1 standard. And then because the port is default, the port is just 5432 as usual. This is where I've changed it. So since we're moving over to basically a better database, we can now handle more items. So what happens normally is with SQLite, the duration is only 7 days, and I think it can only hold up to 1,000 by default. That's the default settings. You can obviously change that. However, since we're now going to be a main Lappy, we're obviously going to be getting way more alerts because there's going to be multiple agents that are talking to this one. So what I have configured is 20,000 items. So that's 20,000 alerts can be held in the database at one time. And then after that, it will start flushing them out. And then also, I've also put the max age of 30 days, just so if I want to do some configuration to say, if this IP has been seen more than 5 times across all my instances, I want to treat that IP differently. I don't want to give it a capture anymore. I want to ban it or something like that. And then underneath, this section here was added because we're going to be doing an Nginx reverse proxy. We need to inform CrowdSec that when a request is sent to it, don't use the remote IP, use the headers that are sent across to it. So in this example, it would use the x44 header. So within that, we're just going to save this and not fat finger it. Cool. So we have got that saved. So now since we've moved across to a different database, we need to re-add this machine to the database because there's currently no data in there at all. The way that we do that is we run cscli machines add, and then if you just put attack A on for automatic, it will go and connect to the database, create a machine ID, and dump the credentials to the default path, which is what we want to do. Now, since we've added the machine to the database, we can now restart the CrowdSec agent to go and talk to the Postgres instance rather than the SQLite. Cool. Just to make sure that this is working, I'm going to look at the CrowdSec logs. And I'm going to go to the very bottom. And then if you don't see any errors or fatals at the bottom, and you just see infos, then yes, it's all working fine. There's no errors in your configuration. Has anyone got any questions on that so far? If so, just hit the questions tab, click on ask new question, and then you can put them in there. The reason I'm saying that is just so if you've got a question at the time now, you can just put it straight in there without you forgetting about it later. Cool. So I'm going to move on to the next step, which is the Nginx stage. So there is 2 ways that you could offer up CrowdSec to the internet. You could either change the configuration to expose the port directly to the internet, such as 8080. However, I don't like doing that because you would want to put some sort of protection in front of that port to say that only these IPs can talk to that port or talk to me as like a server in general. Just in case if you accidentally leak your API key or leak any credentials, there's no chance that they could use that to gain access because you've only whitelisted IP addresses. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do Nginx. So I'm just going to do apt install Nginx -y. Great. And by default, if I just kill localhost, I'll get the default Nginx page. So that means the service is all up and running. Next, we're going to go to my browser. And inside the same Git repository, there is an Nginx stage. Now, I'm obviously going to prefix this by saying that this is configured to my domain. So I haven't gone through and made all these config files. I'm going to show you a kind of a cheat way, but not a cheat way, because it's always best to learn from other people's security practices. So there is a tool that DigitalOcean released called Nginx Config. It's a great website. So if we head over to that now, it's basically like a website config tool that you can use. Type in your information, and then it can basically spit out a bunch of really good defaults that you should be using. So you don't have to think about, oh, what do I add? What do I not add? It's all just configured through here. So I'm just going to show you what I've changed in here. However, I know some people who have already gone through the fact and pre-configured some Nginx stages. I will walk through the default site so you can see exactly what's been added where. However, if you're a seasoned Nginx like professional, it should all make sense to you once you start looking at the configs here. So this is my domain. So I'm telling the config that I've set up a subdomain called CrowdSec.ljcybersolutions.uk. So anything that comes in with that host header is going to be pushed over to the CrowdSec and proxy pass through. I've put my email address there. So if anyone wants to send me an email, you can do, but there's my email address. This is just for the certbot. So when we generate a certificate, I'm going to use certbot rather than self-signing, just so it's easier. So I don't have to do insecure, skip verify, or any of that stuff. Because I've already gone through, PHP is already cancelled off. However, the next big stage is the reverse proxy instance. So I'm enabling reverse proxy, and then I'm telling it to any request that comes in, it's going to be proxy passed over to port 8080, which is the default for CrowdSec. If you have gone through and changed that, then you'll obviously change the port at the end. So the proxy pass is different. And then for routing, I've then just unticked root because I'm just proxying. There's no need for there to be a root at the bottom of it. Heading over to the global configuration. This is all personal preferences, so you can change it to your heart's content. But I don't use Google's public DNS. I just use OpenDNS, Quad9, and Cloudflare Resolver. So you can change all these settings around here. This is just if you want to support this SSL profiles. If you want to support something older, but I wouldn't recommend it, you can just do Mozilla Intermediate for now. And that's all the settings that you need. So I'm just going to follow the steps here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cd into the Nginx page. We are then going to copy this base64 code. So the way that you can do it through Nginx config is that you can download the tar file, or you can copy this base64, which is basically like all the data that it needs, and then it will spit out a tar file from it. So I'll just paste that in there. Obviously, it's a big base64 blob. And now since we did that, if I look at the directory, you now see that I have a nginx config.io from there. Once we've done that, I don't want to take a backup. This is if you want to create a backup, run this step. But because I am fresh out of the box of Nginx, I'm not going to run it. We are then going to extract the Nginx files. And now if we run ls on star, you'll now see that all those files that were in that configuration have now been placed in the general directories that they are. I'm just going to not go to the next bit just yet. So for me, my DNS provider is Cloudflare, and my traffic's being proxied through Cloudflare. So for me, I've created this little helper script, if anyone wants it. What this will do is it will go and get Cloudflare's current IP addresses and creates the Nginx config for the Cloudflare. So I'm just going to grab this just so I can get the right IP address when we connect. So I'm just going to wget this Cloudflare real IP, and then going to chip mod it to make it executable. What did I call it? My eyes are gone. Right, Nginx CF real IP. And then I'm just going to run that script. What it basically does is inside the conf.d directory, there's now a cloudflare.conf. And when you run that, it's just the automatic set real IP from Cloudflare. And then the real IP header is the CF connected IP, which is the one for Cloudflare. So now we're going to move over to the SSL init stage. So because of Nginx config, they do everything through web routes. So there's two ways that you can run certbot. There's in the Nginx plugin, or you can run it through web route. Web route doesn't mean that you don't need any of those plugins. So you don't need to have Python installed or anything like that. So I'm just going to run apt install certbot. So I've already done it. So that will just install the one that I need. And then we're going to head back over to Nginx config and just follow the SSL inits stages. So they create a Diffie-Hellman key. So we're just going to create that. So that won't take too long to run. So while that runs, I'll have a quick look at the questions because I know it can take a little bit. So let's have a look at this. Okay. What will happen if the external DB became not available? Crash your client. It will try to create a connection, but it will keep retrying. I think until 3 times, and then it will just drop the alert. So it won't let you do that. What about use the same DB for multiple clients, or they require a separate one? You can use the same database for the clients. The only thing that we do prefix for that is that you create different machine IDs. You could just do the CSCLI machines add when you're on that machine, and then it will add it into the database. And they can all just talk to the same DB. But you'll just have to make sure that the database is either running in high availability mode. Okay, I'll class that one as done answering for now. Cool. So that has just created a Diffie-Hellman key. So when it goes to serve up the SSL, there's just some extra randomness inside there. So I'm going to make the directory for the Let's Encrypt. This is just because we're doing the certbot with web route, not with the Nginx plugin. And because we're running Ubuntu has a sub-user called www.data that it runs Nginx under. So I'm just going to change the owner of that Let's Encrypt directory to that user, so it has permissions to read files and obviously serve them to anyone that goes there. And then I'm just gonna plow through these commands, but basically what it's doing is it's gonna be commenting out the SSL bits, just so certbot can run and do all the things that it needs to do to generate the certificate, and then it just uncomments the bits. So I'll just run through that really quickly. So this will, so that the top command comments out all of it. This now just tests the Nginx config and reloads it so it's current. And then this is the certbot command. So this is certbot. It's running in cert only mode. I'm going to go through it, but you can pretty much read for itself that it's in the web root mode. It's been pointed to that Let's Encrypt directory, which is the one that's configured. And then it's got agree TOS and force renewal if there's any sort of ones there. So we're just going to run that. So we've got it, and there you go. So that's it. We've got an SSL certificate generated there. We'll then run over to the next command, which is basically uncommenting those things that we've just commented out for the SSL. We'll then run a reload of Nginx. So this will then test the Nginx configuration, reload Nginx. So now we've got HTTPS. This bit at the bottom here is if you run a cron. So certbot has a helper function called certbot renew. And you can basically configure it to run weekly. So there's no chance that you could accidentally forget about your SSL certificate because you've got a cron that's constantly running on there. So this is just basically a hook that goes into it. And then we'll chirp mod that to make it executable for the hook. And that is it. So now we have SSL. So now if we kill HTTPS on crowdsec.ljcybersolutions.uk, and if we go to /health, which is the CrowdSec health endpoint, we now get a status up. So now it's going from Nginx being proxied through to CrowdSec, and then CrowdSec's then handling the stuff from there. There is one extra configuration that I like to do personally. So when you set up Nginx as a reverse proxy, obviously there's nothing stopping anyone from coming and sending data to that endpoint. However, for CrowdSec, because I already know the IP address of the machine that's going to be talking to this endpoint, I might as well set up an extra bit of configuration just to block anyone else that isn't the machine that I've whitelisted. So if I head into sites available, and in sites available, we've got this crowdsec.ljcybersolution.config. What I'm going to do is open this. I'm going to open it with Nano actually, because I need to make some changes. So in this configuration, before I make my changes, I'm just going to walk through the bits that if you've already got Nginx up and running, these are the extra bits that you should already do if you need to slot in the configuration. So inside here, we've got location /. From here, you can just basically put a proxy pass and send it straight over to wherever the CrowdSec is listening on. Mine's default, so it's just listening on 127 on 8080. It's then going to set the header to the host. To be honest with you, that's not really needed because CrowdSec doesn't change anything if it's a different host header. That's more if you're using like Apache and it's got like virtual hosts. You've then included this proxy conf. So I'll show you what's inside this proxy config. So inside Nginx proxy config, there's a proxy.conf. And basically, this is setting certain headers for the proxy. So inside here, we have X forwarded for, X real IP, everything that you'll need that when the connection gets passed through to CrowdSec, it will then get the real IP. So when you do CSCLI machines list, you'll actually see the real IP address rather than just 127.0.0.1. But in the config, I want to add two new options. So these options are allow, and then I'm just going to head over to my second child machine, and I'm just going to run IP addr show f0, which is the WAN interface, and I'm going to grab the IP address here, and then I'm going to say allow this IP, but anything else, I'm going to deny all. So if you're not originating from this IP address, you cannot talk to CrowdSec from there. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to run nginx-t to test the configuration. It's working fine. So then we're going to run nginx-s and then reload. That will then tell Nginx to reload the configuration rather than dropping any of the connections that it's got currently. We can confirm that this works if I did curl local, if we do curl HTTPS CrowdSec ljcybersolutions.uk, you'll now see that I get a forbidden rather than CrowdSec. However, if I go over to my child machine and run that same curl command over to crowdsec.ljcybersolutions.uk, and then if I go to the health endpoint, you'll now see that I get the status up, which is means that I'm allowed to touch the CrowdSec rather than getting blocked. So that is the Nginx configuration stage. So from there, you basically now got some sort of segregation, so nobody can just talk to CrowdSec. So there is one extra point that I did put onto the GitHub repo, and that was about why don't we configure the main machine to also talk over HTTPS? And that's just because for me personally, I use Cloudflare. So what would happen is the request will leave the server and then be proxied back in just for it to make a round trip around. So that's the reason why I haven't configured it on there. You can configure it if you want to, but I don't really see much value being added. Because if you have any issues such as like man-in-the-middle attacks, if they're already on your box, then they already can obviously see that information. But if you're traveling to loopback, then there's nothing leaving the box, so it can't be sniffed from there. So now we're going to move over to the child machine. So this is everything set up on here that we needed to do. So that is the main Lappy configured. We're now going to move over to child. So now this child agent is it's straight out the box vanilla. There's nothing been configured on here so far. So what we're going to do, the first command is we're going to say to this machine that we're registering our credentials over to the other machine. So for that, we're going to run cscli lappy register, and then we're going to pass it an option called tacu. So if I run the help command, u is a URL. So this is basically like a remote address. And from there, you can either obviously add the fully qualified domain, or you can type in the IP address with the port number if that's what you're doing, rather than exposing through Nginx. So I'm going to type HTTPS, CrowdSec, and then ljcybersolutions.uk. And then that's where I'm registering my endpoint is going to be. What that will do is then it will send a request to the CrowdSec Lappy saying, hey, I want to register with you. You'll get a reject command straight away. So at the moment, it's not configured. So you need to head back over to the main Lappy. We are then going to run cscli machines list. And if I just scale it back a second, you can now see that you have a machine here with this name, with this IP address that has tried to connect. However, because it's not validated yet, it's not able to connect. So we need to validate it. So the way that you do that is if you just copy the full machine name and then do, I'm just going to clear the screen a second, cscli machines. First, I'll run the help. And you can see that one of the options on the machines is validate. So we'll run cscli machines, validate, and then I'm just going to right click and paste that whole machine ID there. Now, if we run the machines list again, you'll now see that it's got a tick to say that it's okay, we've validated this. The reason that we put in this extra step is that if anyone sends a command saying, I want to connect to you, they don't just automatically get authenticated. You have to do this additional step. So that is that. So before we run the restart on the CrowdSec agent, there's one extra thing. Because we're now using the other Lappy as our main Lappy, we don't need to run the Lappy on this server anymore. So the way that we used to tell you to do this was you would head into the service file, and then you would put the option no API on the end of the service file. However, there's been some cases there where they where we do an update and the service file gets overridden, and then it re-enables the Lappy again. And then some people have some issues there. So I'm just going to show you the other way to do it, which is commenting out the server config. So we're going to head over to etc CrowdSec. We're then going to nano the config Actually, this is Rocky, so we don't have nano on here, but I'll just VI it instead. We're then going to VI the config.yaml. And then we're going to scroll all the way down here to the API section. And then rather than doing the no API stuff, we're going to just put hashtags in front of these options here. And then, well, hashtag pound, math symbol, whatever you want to call it. You just want to comment out so it's not thinking that there's any sort of server on there. Once you've done that, you'll just save the file. And then once we've done that, we can now do systemctl restart CrowdSec. We can confirm if this works if we do cat on the var log crowdsec.log. We now see that there is no errors there. And if we head over to the other machine, and if we run machines list again, well, let me just zoom it back a little bit and run it again. You'll now see that the last heartbeat over in the remote IP address is 22 seconds. So it has reconnected since we've last done the update. And then on the child machine, if we run sslntp, you'll now see that there is no 8080 running. So there's no server. There's no additional memory being used for no reason because you don't need the lappy running on this machine anymore. So that is them. And next, I'm going to show you how to connect a bouncer. So I haven't installed a bouncer on here yet. So if I do DNF install CrowdSec firewall bouncer and then IP tables. I think that's the way it's spelled. Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm just going to install this. So by default, it will try to get the API credentials and try to create a API key. So because we've already configured that, if I head over to here now and I do cscli bouncers list, we see now there is no bouncers installed. And if I look over here, yeah, because the local API disabled, there is no bouncers. So if I go to look at the bouncers configuration by heading into etc CrowdSec bouncers, and if I cat the CrowdSec firewall bouncer, you'll see it hasn't managed to generate an API key. So the boilerplate code that just says API key here hasn't been replaced. So it is not able to do that because it's a remote lappy. It can't run those commands. However, we can manually add this bouncer. So on the main lappy, what we are going to run is we're going to run cscli bouncers and then add. And then we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it child-firewall, just any sort of name like that. Then it will give me a key. Then we're going to head back over to the child lappy, or the child agent, sorry, should I say. And we're just going to edit that CrowdSec firewall bouncer configuration. And in the API URL, we're going to update this to obviously be my domain. So we're going to do HTTPS, and I'm just going to type it really fast, LJ Server Solutions.uk. And then in the API key, we're just going to fill out that API key that we've just copied and pasted from the other machine. We're then going to restart the CrowdSec firewall bouncer. And then if we run status, we'll see that the bouncer is still running. It hasn't crashed. And then if we then go and cat the CrowdSec firewall bouncer logs, we then see here that it's managed to connect. It's managed to create all the IP tables and stuff, and it's processed and add the 3 decisions that it needed to. So the way that you would need to do it from there is, let's say if you've got another bouncer, you'll then need to come to the main lappy, generate the key, and then transfer it over to that machine. And that is how you hook up a remote firewall. And then if you wanted to install one on the main lappy, you can then just install it as normal. But because it's not remote, it's talking obviously locally, it can do all the generation of the API key automatically without any of that needed steps. So if you have a third machine that you'll hook up, you'll just follow through those commands that we did just for the child one, which is just the running the lappy register, connecting to the URL. You'll then comment out the server settings, restart CrowdSec, and that's it. It's already connected. So those are the steps that you'll just redo over and over again if you want to keep connecting multiple and multiple. So that is the crux of that. So we now have everything over HTTPS. It's already doing that. So do we have any questions? I did see there was one beforehand. Okay. So this is a DB connection failure. So there is no failover. It needs to have connection to the 1DB. So like I said, it does try to do it so long, but if let's say if it's like you've lost internet coverage or anything like that, then there's no way for us to obviously keep retrying because it's just wasting resources. So at the moment, no, there is no a failover. It's either that the connection is there or it's not. Right. Anyone got anything to say? You can use the chat, use the questions if you've got any questions regarding it. There's also a poll running as well. But we can use this as like a Q&A stage now if nothing was clear. Thank you, Kimo. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not really too complicated once you do the initial setup on the main lappy. It's just that configuration that goes there. But I can also show you as well if you want to expose it without Nginx, and then what sort of configuration you can do there. It'd be mostly just that you would use IP tables or firewall just to say that only this IP address can talk to port 8080, and then do it from there. However, I find that IP tables, like the syntax can go over people's heads. So that's why I rather use the Nginx configuration, because then you can just do allow and deny. And it's just much more simpler in that regard. Do you know what? I didn't click on the show results button, so people could have answered already, but I didn't see the results. Do you know, sometimes the interface can be quite with little buttons that like merge into the same color. There's going to be a new poll. Just type in as fast as I can. Cool. And then there's a new poll. Just like to get your information on it because it's just interesting. Because like some people might think it's really complicated, but obviously walking through step by step like this through like some sort of engaging comment is obviously a lot easier than reading their boring big massive paragraph. But I do like the idea of having like some sort of failover, even if it's like temporary in memory, and then like have like a poll system that it just polls out and then says, hey, I've got connection back, here's everything that I've missed. But the only issue is from that point is, well, depends on the reason for the connection loss. Because like the lappy would have to poll the database to get the current decisions. Yeah, but at the moment we just have one config that says this is the database that I'm running, and it will just use that database. It doesn't have the ability to overflow or have a failover. But it's interesting to use the SQLite as like a place in memory to say store it here for now until I get connection back. But that's interesting. But in the ideal world, we should never have connection issues. But you know what tech is like; it'll just randomly just die for no reason, anyways. So, right, is there any more questions? Just put them in the questions tab, because if not, I'm gonna probably make this run for another 5 minutes and then call it a night. Because I don't know where you are in the world, but for me, it's near 7 o'clock at night. No, it's not too late, but got things to do. I will be updating the GitHub repo with the steps for the child agent near 11 p.m. Where are you? Damn. At least there's a recording. I'm guessing that's why you asked if there's going to be a recording, just in case if you snooze off, you can go back to it. Yeah, that's the reason why we do this on this platform. Just because when we did it via Discord, the way we had like a hacky way to do it, where you would get a child account to join, and then you'd be recorded through the child account, and then you'll then have to spend ages like post production in it because it just didn't really work. Like, but I'm guessing most of you know about our Discord. If not, you should join it. And that's discord.gg/CrowdSec. And you can join there. Every single day I'm in there. So if you have any issues or anything like that, you can talk them in there. If not, just say hi. It's all the teams in there, so you can say that we do a good job or anything like that. And we got another question. Cool. Let's put this up. Okay, with multiple agents connected to a single LAPI, is it possible to have the agent send its metrics data to the Prometheus endpoint of the single LAPI? This is in order to run CSLI metrics to the central API to see all stats. No. So they would still have to have all separate metrics endpoints. So then if you had like a Prometheus scraper, they would obviously go to the retrospective ones from there. The way that I've seen people do it is they expose that port 6060 and then they just firewall it off to say that only the main LAPI IP address can scrape this endpoint. It's technically doable because it's just a maybe it might be a good idea that we have a way to point a URL into the command, but then like you're it's then saying, oh, is that really best practice for security wise, exposing your metrics port to the internet? The only thing they can get off the metrics port is all the information surrounding it, unless obviously there's a vulnerability that comes out on Prometheus. So, but yeah, I understand what you mean. Like you can run CSLI metrics from the one main LAPI and then get all the information into one. But yeah, no, the main way to do it would just be to have a Prometheus scraper that will just go and scrape those endpoints for the main one. See, then you just have one Prometheus instance. Yeah, but yeah, if you do want to see the recording, like as soon as this ends, it will just be like a raw recording of me, no post production jazz or anything like that. It's just me talking with the microphone. Cheers, thank you. And then you can just replay as much as you want, and then on the YouTube later, we'll have a more jazzed up version of it for that. Cheers, everyone. Thank you. But yeah, remember Discord. If not, but we'll end it. We'll end it now.